Hello everyone. On behalf of my entire team at Lamarck School of Arts, I, Samira Shah, welcome all of you for the webinar series, Signature and Inspirational Journey of Pathbreakers. Today we have with us Mahima Sayani, a very successful young and dynamic entrepreneur who owns the multi-designer store View and has 5 stores in South Mumbai catering to the high-end clients. So before we begin and before we have Mahima speak and address her entire story to all of us, can we have a quick look at her brand and get a glimpse of what you is all about? Can we please have the video?
Hi,
Okay,
Samira.
great. Hi Mahima, so we have you here very
Hi.
much. So welcome. We were all very much eagerly waiting to have you with us, and I'm sure everyone is now also. We just seen the video of you and how beautiful your collection looks like, and how much effort and hard work that is put in by you in coming to this success over a period of 6 good years. So I'm sure we are all waiting to hear on how exactly because I know for sure you come from a finance background. You're a chartered accountant by qualification, and you started a business which is into fashion and lifestyle, which is, I'm sure, quite a contrast in itself and a little different to take up for someone who comes from a finance background. So, how and where did all of this begin?
Samira, hi. Firstly, a very good evening to everybody who has taken some time to join us in this webinar. Now, Samira, coming back to your question, I come from a finance background. I've completed my chartered accountancy by qualification. But when it comes to fashion, it always excited me. The colors, the shades, the Indian designs, I was always passionate about them since my teenage times. So as a teenager, like every normal girl, I had a dream to wear a Malhotra lehenga. One day when I had to choose between being a CA or a fashion designer or opening up a fashion boutique, I think everybody knows now by now what I have chosen. For this, I completely had my family's support. My father, my mother never questioned me as to, why I don't want to take up chartered accountancy as my core career and why I want to open a multi-designer store. My father always believed in it, and here I am living my passion and my dream.
Wow, amazing. So I'm sure it was, it was something that came out of more from heart, and I'm sure it is something which was, of course, supported by your family very much. Looks like that it began. But you have been a success story for sure, and in this world today, where everyone is moving toward different e-commerce platforms or other areas of work, but you have made it space and a very strong presence with like you have 5 stores in South Mumbai, which is really something that people would be waiting to look for. So what exactly because you also create a lot of interesting experiences for your customers, and I'm sure you're always the best at it, especially when it comes to customer service and all of it. So how do you what is it that really gets on to creating this experience? What are the elements that you put in together?
Samira, to just begin with, we are not doing anything unique in the industry. We are just curators of designer collection. We select our designers, we select our collections with the designers, and we curate the best of the collections within that and give it to our customers. So I would say there are 10 more other stores in the same vicinity doing the same job, but then what makes it unique? Why would the customer want to come to my store, and why would the customer want to shop at You Fashions is the main question that I would want to answer. Is because of the trust that we build in the customer, and B, because of the customer service that we give them. We are into the luxury segment where customers come from a very educated background. They are all aware as to what they want to buy, what fashion is about, and they also know that there are 10 more different varieties available for them outside my store. So we have to have an upper hand as to how we treat our customers and what we provide our customers. Secondly, we study our customer choice and demand in detail. When we sit with the designer to curate a collection for the store, it's more based on what my customers would want from them. So when a customer enters into my store, they definitely know that if they are looking for something in particular, they would definitely find it at my store. That's where we are trying to build our customer service and make it very strong.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm one such person who will definitely vouch by it, because I still remember one of our fashion shows when I didn't really have the time, and just 2 days back I hopped into the store, and Mahima, with all her warmth, actually, she was just, don't worry, and here it goes. And in one day I had the fitting, the perfect, styling from the, I mean, honestly, being in the industry, you sometimes you still want someone to be there to help you out. And I would say all the services that were provided at you, right from picking up the color of my outfit to being there, styling it. Mahima was there all throughout, thick and thin, helping me out just one day before a show, which is going to be an evening. So I'm sure there's no second opinion, or there cannot be a much better experience than what actually you give us. So
See,
and then
exactly
actually,
that's.
yes.
Samir, I didn't hear you. Sorry.
No, you can say you were saying something.
No, that's where I come from. That what you are doing in the market can only be unique by how you look at it or what's your approach towards dealing with it. So our approach is to make customers feel at home. Our approach is to give them that styling tips, make them look perfect. There are hundreds of outfits to select from, but you as a customer would want to know what would make you look the best. That's why you're coming to my store to pick up the best designer outfit. And that's what we try and give them, to make them look best at their occasion or at their event.
Sure, and I'm sure you're really doing it very perfectly. So to take the
Thank
conversation
you.
ahead, before we take it ahead, can we just have a quick video of the celebrities and a lot of other interactions that actually happen at you? Can we have the next video, please?
Sure.
It always feels nice to be a part of an event in a beautiful store like this. Of course, I'm here now in a different capacity. Normally, I used to come for these kind of previews and launches to see other designers' work. Today I'm here to be a part of this launch with my own work, and that always feels very nice. And I really like the aesthetic of the store. My sarees are not about weight and extra bling and extra embroidery. Currently, my sarees are light, wearable. Designing is another world altogether. It's another mindset. It's another kind of thinking. But the good thing is there's no monotony in my life. One day I could be acting in something, one day I could be anchoring a show, and the third day I'm sitting with my master G and getting my sarees made. So it's an exciting life. I have no complaints. You know, full of thanks and gratitude.
I think that Obviously, this is actually the first time that I'm coming here, and they've launched a brand new collection. And I think it's very, it embodies the festive spirit that we're embarking on now. I think they have anything that a young woman like myself who wants to dress up in. Everything from I've seen some beautiful anarkalis, I've seen lots of lehengas, I've seen some sarees, including what I'm wearing, which is also a part of the collection. And there's a lot of things from I think people who want perhaps lighter fabrics or chiffons to the heavier silks, there's georgette, there's velvet, there's a little bit of everything, I think, very well. Well, what I found actually just now, I think especially because of the color contrast, which I like, because purple is one of my favorite colors, I think people know by now. This is, of course, by Miss Topi Des. And I think it's a beautiful lehenga. It's also what I like with the fabric, because it's very light.
Samira, I can't hear you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Am I audible now?
Yeah, yeah.
So this was wonderful, and I know that you also host a lot of events in the store when you have celebrities. But to curate these kind of in-store events, how and what makes you do this, and how does all these inspirations actually come in?
So to just begin with, this is mainly done for our customers. They get a first-hand experience to meet the designers. The designers get to interact with the customers, understand what the customers want, and that really helps an individual designer to curate something specific for the store. When we say that we are trying to curate our collections based on our customers' demand, that's where we give a platform to the designers and the customers to come together and interact and share their views as to what we like about the collection or what we would want in the next season's collection to happen. And when we talk about then organizing the events at the store, we have to of course make it glamorous since it's associated with fashion, and Bollywood always adds that glamour to the event. And not to forget, Bollywood and fashion goes hand in glove, so it's just very easy for us to organize or to curate everything with the help of our designers.
Yeah, but I'm sure you play a very important role there, because I do remember you also have, in fact, sometimes like a live show into your store. It's as rocking and as live, actually, I would say, as it can be, probably on those big stage, and in the fashion week. You get that entire aura, that entire audience into your store, which is really, really something to look at. So, to take the conversation ahead, Mahima, I'm sure you have a lot of industry expertise and you have a lot of experience, that in the form of a presentation which you wanted to share with, the audience, mainly being a lot of students and people from the fashion industry who are waiting to hear you out and to understand your insights on what it is and what is the fashion industry all about and all like today. And of course, way forward, which I'm sure will come in the form of a lot of questionnaire. So for all of you in the audience, the questions will be taken on chat. So while Mahima does the presentation, if you have anything, please post it, but we will take them only at the end of the, after the completion of the entire presentation now, which is completely over to Mahima to take up. So Mahima, can we have your screen shared and can we begin with the presentation, please?
Yeah, just to first, before I start the presentation, I would just like to give a brief to the audience as to what the presentation will be about, and today what topics are we going to cover in the presentation. Mainly today, what we are trying to speak is fashion looks very glamorous from the outside, and people really like, maybe 80% of the people who get into fashion don't really think as their base career option. And there's a lot of myth that fashion cannot be the main bread and butter. But today we would like to give you some insights and would like to break that myth, because we come from a very unorganized sector. The data is maybe not recorded, but let us go through let us go through the entire presentation and understand as to what is the scope and what is the potential in the entire fashion industry. And if we take it more seriously and if we make it more organized, we can definitely become the largest industry in this country.
Sure. We will have a presentation now from Mahima coming up.
Hi Samira, can you see my screen?
Not as yet that we can see, but yeah, I'm sure it will come. We can just see you on the camera. The screen is not yet coming.
Okay. Now can you see my screen?
Not as yet though. Yeah, yes, we can see the screen. Perfect.
Okay, so let's begin. The presentation is all about Indian fashion insights. You always wonder what is the place of fashion, especially that of the Indian fashion industry in the world. Well, these are the issues that Indian fashion industry seems to be facing at the moment. But for an industry as old as our civilization, I feel that's a very small speck of a question to wonder on. It's just not about fashion designers. The fashion designers just have to make use of the available resources to introduce new designs into the market. So, yes, if you're considering a career in the fashion industry, good news is your options are not limited to just fashion designing. Fashion designers are just a small portion of this whole game. In India, other sectors like manufacturing fabric, importing and exporting textiles, embroidery, and dyeing make up a much bigger portion of this industry. There's always a myth that fashion is all about art. Today, let's just break that myth. If you were bad in geometry in school, I'm sure everybody understands how difficult tailoring would be. So, for everybody who thinks that, oh, you're not academically good, you should try taking arts or you should then enter fashion, it's just a myth. We have so many examples and fashion designers who have come from the most educational background and are proving themselves into fashion and have also shown us that fashion can be their main bread and butter. Talking about Indian handloom, we are the second largest producer of silk after China and the third largest producer of cotton. With such a background and surplus, it is only natural that most of our fashion would use these fabrics. Khadi cotton is our pride, and replacing it with synthetic materials, like following other countries, had a backlash on traditional fabrics. You and I can be a part of this revolution by being interested customers or patriotic designs. So let's, as a designer, pledge to use more of cotton and silk fabrics and promote our Indian weavers and handloom industry. If I were to ask everybody what is the total share of sari sale in the fashion industry, you all would be amazed to know that one third of the apparel sale is from the sari industry today, even in the 21st century. We have various options like fusion clothes, or we have all our MNCs coming into this country and selling right from everything that is jeans to skirt to t-shirts to Bermudas. But to all our surprise, sari is still the most fastest selling textile product in the country and it occupies one third of the total fashion market. Here is some data which proves that sari occupies 43% of the total fashion market, followed by traditional fusion wear. Let us discuss something as to what unorganized industry versus an organized e-commerce fashion industry looks like. If we all see e-commerce, the numbers are high as data is collected and recorded. When we always say that fashion is unorganized, that's only because many of us don't operate, they don't have a proper accounting software or don't want to pay taxes, so we don't record our sales, or we are just operating with local weavers or handloom people who don't have any data to record. E-commerce contribution to the fashion industry. As we see over here, e-commerce is the most fastest growing sector, with fashion being the second largest occupant in e-commerce, followed with electronics and appliances, which occupies 50% of the total e-commerce share. As we see here in our next slide, there is a comparison of where the fashion industry stands globally in the e-commerce market. Globally, in the e-commerce market, our fashion industry occupies 68% of the total e-commerce global market. And do we also know that every second India is adding 3 new users, which has made India the second largest internet user country. Made in India. We all know our dear Prime Minister Modi ji is preaching and has given us a lot of benefits and is always advocating for us to use Make in India products and to promote our local industries and handloom industries. Let us see what all benefits do we get for this Make in India project. Policy support. 100% of FDI is allowed in the Indian textile sector. To boost export, free trade with ASEAN is allowed. In 2020, new textile policy is expected to be released by the Ministry of Textiles. So basically, such international brands are easily able to sell at a 400% margin, and everybody would be amazed to know that all your international brands, right from Gap to Levi's, have their manufacturing units in India because of our Make in India project and the support that our dear Prime Minister Mr. Narendra Modi ji is providing all of us for the manufacturing and the production sector. If these designers could do it, then anyone else can also do it. They are the most famous fashion designers in this country. I'm sure I don't need to brief their names or give any intro about themselves, but it's just inspirational that how these designers start and now where have they reached all the way. Even with modernity thumping on the doors, many Indian designers find a way to weave in traditional ethos into their customers, and that is one reason why Indian fashion remains unique. Samira, can I have somebody play the Sabyasachi video?
Yeah, sure. So we'll do that. Maybe you'll have to, since your presentation is completed, we will share the screen with the video now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As a boy, Satya would cut his father's socks to make dresses for his sister's doll. Eventually became more inclined towards a career in designing frocks. Satya wrote in to his parents that he wanted to study at the National Institute of Fashion Technology. When his parents refused to give him the money for his NIFT exam, he sold his books. Not the application completed, nor the exam got through. After graduating from NIFT in 1999, instead of applying for jobs, he started his own label with 20,000 rupees borrowed from his sister. He fixed a bed in the workshop. He made his work his life. He His work ethics and hard work took Sabyasachi's annual turnover to a whopping $11 million. Sabya said, "You can do it. This is time to explore impossible."
So this was a little inspirational video and journey about our designer Sabyasachi Mukherjee. I think he's also one of the most inspired designers today, and it's every girl's dream again to wear a Sabyasachi lehenga in the wedding. So if a designer like a Sabyasachi or a Manish Malhotra could do it and start from where they have started, I'm sure everybody can. And to just add on to one more fact, Sabyasachi today has acquired the international level and is competing with international luxury brands. Sabyasachi is the only Indian designer brand which is now being compared to all our international luxury brand and has a turnover of 100 million in just 20 years. I think that's the
Amazing.
greatest inspiration for all of us sitting over here and wondering whether to take fashion as a core business or not to take fashion as a core business.
I'm sure many have these questions, and so lots of such questions in regards to the fashion industry and the fashion business, where in a very I would say a beautiful way, that in a short little very time, but you gave us so much insight about the industry and about where exactly fashion is heading. I'm sure for all of us, when we say fashion, we are assuming it to be more to come up with Western attires or outfits which are more so-called modern, and not really knowing that okay, even a very traditional acceptable outfit like a sari has so much of a share in the market and the industry, where yes, saris are also looked up at. And yes, in one of your previous videos that we also saw, where the Mandira Vedi, she is definitely known as a brand for her saris. So if you can put a little highlight on how has the sales of these kind of products been in comparison at your store or even otherwise in the fashion industry?
So, Samira, to just give a little insight about these products, definitely I agree with the fact whenever we have a sari display at the store or whenever we do a sari collection, we are just left with no stocks at all, because these days designers have completely gone into manufacturing in fusion clothes. They want to experiment. A young girl would never want to wear a sari, so designers are more focusing on clothes that look good on the hangers and which have more rack appeal, which is a valid point. But traditionally, we also know somewhere down the line that what sells for us is still the traditional clothes. Your lehengas, your saris typically are the items which add up and give your sale numbers. Fusion clothes are very experimental. A model kind of a body would only want to wear that, but at a client level, trust me, when we get our clients in stores, it's customers like you and me who probably don't have a model size figure but also still want to look good at every given point of time when we go out for lunches or when we go out for dinners or we are just hanging out with friends. At that time, we are not that conscious about our body. The only thing that we have in mind is okay, what is the best we can do to look presentable in front of 5 to 10 people. And I think for every designer, it's very important to understand that, firstly, to understand what Indian body looks like. It's not a model size figure that everybody aims for. It's a very decent 38 to a 40 size body. Keeping that in mind, if we know what looks good on the body, trust me, customers are very happy picking that up. And when I come back to sari is kind of a fabric that maybe we as an Indian know in how many different ways we can wear it. And trust me, it can make you look wonders as compared to other Western clothes if worn correctly.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure what you're saying is actually what comes in, and but then in your store, I'm sure you do have a lot of ready-to-wear saris or saris which are for the younger generation where they want to definitely also wear them.
Yeah, these days there is a latest trend of dhoti style saris, which is hitting the racks completely. Every designer is making slip-on saris, dhoti style saris. As I said earlier, it's just the way how you drape it. And I'm very grateful to these designers who have done that, because even a person like me today, being in the fashion industry, I don't know how to drape a sari. So to come up with an idea as to just have a sari like your jeans where you slip it on and you're done and you're still looking traditional, it's fab. And uh, to our surprise, all the young girls today want to pick up a dhoti style sari, and designers are just figuring out ways in what kind of different fabrics or prints or styles can they launch it. So
Great. So before we
we have designers like Sogat Paul, Masaba, who are doing great with their drape style saris these days.
okay, that's really good, you know. But then with you, you've been amazing in regards to this business of fashion, and you know your graph has always been, I would say, growing upwards. But there's also a you know where you ventured into beauty and hair and salon business. So can you please share a little insights on that as well with all of us?
So I've almost been in this industry now since I've always been in this industry now, and it's been almost 8 years that we've completed in this industry. So, almost 2 years back, we had these properties in Pedder Road. They were like four boutique stores. So the journey began again over there from the scratch. We started our designer stores. We started collaborating with the Gen X designers and gave them a platform to open boutiques. We bridged the gap between the designers and the industry, because today being on as an entrepreneur, if somebody would tell me to start designing or to manage a factory and master Gs and tailors, would be a little difficult. So when my designers do that part for me, Samira, I'm really happy. So the only thing I have to focus is on selling and managing that product and marketing that product. So here we came up with this unique idea of collaborating with the Gen X designers who were talented, but at the same time didn't have the bandwidth to manage the front end store, marketing, customers, and everything. We went to our designers and we told them, you focus on the designing aspect, leave the marketing and the retailing part to us. There were That's where my first store collaboration with Preeti Jhavar started. And now here we are. Well, after 2 years, we've collaborated with Purvi Doshi, we've collaborated with Saugat Paul, and we've opened their own flagship stores. After doing this for 2 years, our customers started always giving us a feedback that what is it that you can do different at the street for us. So that's where the idea clicked that we should start thinking something different from entering into fashion industry, and what other than pampering or self love would go along with the fashion industry. That's where the idea started, and we opened our first salon, which was a nail addict. That was a nail salon bar, an exclusive bar which was only and only open for our customers at U Fashions. All our stores at Pedder Road are interconnected, so a customer would have a happy shopping experience, sit at a nail bar, pamper themselves with gel polish or mani pedi, enjoy their cup of coffee, and have a full-blown luxury experience. After 1 year of our journey at Nail Bar, our customers were so happy with the service that they got at the nail bar. We were getting continuous feedbacks to start a hair salon. So only and only at our customer request, we had to maybe shut one of our boutiques at Pedder Road and convert that into a hair bar and completely merge the entire salon. Now in 2019, it is 2019, we merged the nail bar and the hair bar, and it's called Hair and Nail Addict, along with two designer boutiques, which is uh, one is by Soup by Sogat Paul and one is Purvi Doshi. So at Pedder Road, if you ever happen to be, you will see a whole luxury lifestyle experience where a customer gets in, pampers themselves to a nice hair spa day, to mani pedi, shops a designer garment, and walks out. That's the whole experience that we are trying to create for our customers.
Okay. I'm sure this, something that you're really best at, pampering the customers, right from styling them to pampering them in a way where you give them a complete look by, with hair, with nails. I would say that's something really, really amazing. So, but then what exactly, because today the trend is more going towards e-commerce, and here you are expanding your business on a retail front. So what would you advise these young designers who are actually trying to move themselves into the e-commerce platforms?
So for e-commerce, I would say that as we all know that we all are in lockdown right now, physical markets are shut, retail industry is completely shut. You're everybody going all live on e-commerce portals, which is a good thing. Everybody wants to make the maximum of this lockdown. It's good to utilize your time, do something productive, but at the same time, we should never forget that everything comes with a cost. I personally believe that e-commerce is a complete different avenue. As it's as good as managing or maintaining your retail business, e-commerce itself requires a different set of module. You need people to run that. You need you need marketing activity. You need to be completely updated on a day-to-day basis. Especially being in a fashion industry where your collections or your clothes change every month or every 2 months. We are not into an FMCG where we can just upload our products and just focus on the marketing end. Along with focusing on marketing end, we also need to keep changing our products, keep updating our products, and we need to ensure that we are completely up to date with the market and same messages passed on to our customers. So I totally appreciate and I'm with people who are going live on e-commerce. But personally, for me, I feel especially in the year 2020 where businesses have been affected, we are on a slowdown, businesses are don't know when the business will start. I'm just trying to minimize my cost. I don't want my company to have any kind of recurring cost, especially for the year of 2020. My only motto is stay still, stand through the storm. Once the storm is over, give yourself a little time to come out of the storm and then wait what's happening in the market and then weigh your options and start whatever new we would want to start. That's all I would want to say about e-commerce in 2020, especially.
Yeah, I'm sure what you're saying makes so much sense in a way where, especially for all of us who are actually now waiting to move out of of our homes and have that kind of luxury of traveling and again experiencing the kind of streets that actually Mumbai had. I'm sure, of course, shopping on a personal front rather than having a digital presence is definitely something which will also be looked up to by a lot of people. So I'm quite sure that will be something that people want to look forward to. But Mahima, tell us something about how exactly do you source talent? Like, how do you go about the process of it?
So, Samira, to begin with, we have a complete team of merchandisers who help us select the right product. It's sometimes not easy. Even we have to go to all the exhibitions. We have to attend all the fashion shows, especially when I go to the exhibitions. It's so funny. I meet so many known faces. They all, and it's so like different because everybody is out there shopping, selecting something for their personal use. Oh, I have this function to go, that function to go. But for us, it's completely professional. We go there. We are always in hunt for new designers. Mainly in these exhibitions, we never know from where we might find some designer who is not so well known but might need an opportunity to showcase their talent. That's where our brand comes into picture. And to just give a little insight about the industry also, I think the beauty about our fashion industry is, Samira, today that we do not differentiate or discriminate between talent, caste, religion, or financial backgrounds. I mean, whether you come from a big setup or you are just a simple designer starting from your house where one darzi is sitting at your place, if you're talented, I'm sure there are hundreds of retail stores, e-commerce portals ready to showcase your collection. And that's what our main motto at U Fashions is. We are continuously just in hunt for designers who have talent and who are just waiting for some platform to showcase this kind of new talent. So we not only focus on designers who come out of Lakme Fashion Week or who are showcasing at FDCI, but also small time designers who might not be available anywhere, but our customers are just simply happy buying them. That's our motto behind selecting the designers and curating the collection at U Fashions.
Wow, but then, for an aspiring designer who's wanting to see themselves at the multi-designer store, what is the process like exactly? And can you just kind of put a little light on the same? If there's a young student designer who's just coming up and wants to approach, so how or should he or she go about the whole thing?
So for young designers, I would love to say that firstly, be very confident about whatever you all are creating. Believe in yourself and believe in your product, because with the young designers, the trend we see today is either everybody tries to follow what the market is trying to do, or the one collection, the first collection that is created is very different from the second collection. Stick to your core. If say you're good at printing, stick to your those prints. Try creating certain unique prints for yourself which might not be available in the market. Stick to that, focus on that, and create a collection in and around that. Ensure that every collection has a story. Even if you're creating a minimum of say 10 to 12 pieces, every piece has something to say and every piece is connected with the other piece, so that even when a store displays the collection as a whole, it should look good and presentable to the clients. And secondly, as to how to get that opportunity to display, I would say we all are very approachable as stores. We are always in search for these new designers, so we are always and continuously checking our inboxes and our mailbox. Feel free, send in your lookbooks, write to us. I'm sure if your collection has that kind of spark, any store would approach you. Not only my store, but any store in this country would approach you, and that's the only and the right way to follow this.
Okay, wow. I'm sure all the insight that we've been also discussing as a conversation is something that is giving a lot of knowledge to all our young designers and to the students who have now started to actually pour in a lot of questions on the chat as well. So I'm sure I'm going to take a couple of questions from the audience. Where
Sure.
I begin with Meghna, who's got a question for you, where she wants to know that what, according to Mahima, is the upcoming trend and how would someone decide on that?
So, Meghna, I would firstly say that that's a very interesting question to understand as to what's the upcoming trend and how would one know what's the upcoming trend. So, to just break this myth, we at our store always follow that nothing is an upcoming trend. Everything, whatever a designer wants to sell for us, basically is the most upcoming trend. Today, for example, Vikram Fadnis is doing something couture. He's always doing something in silk fabrics. So I cannot guide a designer that, okay, right now the trend is not to wear silk and the trend is to wear cotton, so please start manufacturing cotton. No, if a designer is manufacturing something on raw silk and embroidery base, our trend changes as to what the designers are making. And if a Saugat Paul is confident about doing prints, so he's continuously always going to do prints. So I would say there is nothing called as what is in trend right now. We at our store are always confident as to selling our products to the customers, and we are at the same time confident about what our designers are making. So for us, whatever the designers are making is always the trend, even if they are doing something as simple as just making a straight kurta. And for the customers to decide now what is the trend, I would again say be confident as to what looks good on you, what you want to wear. Maybe, yes, your fabric selection can be based on the weather, that it's too some like the weather is very hot outside. We can just stick to lighter fabric that's cotton, or the weather is too cold outside. We can stick to some jackets or some velvet, silvets, whatever. So it's all about at the end of the day what makes you look the best and what makes you the most confident person when you go out in front of five people. Trust me, when we are confident, that is what is going to become the trend for people seeing us or looking at us.
Yeah, I'm sure what you're saying is actually so much where today fashion is for a lot of people what they are really comfortable into, and that is what is really looked up at. With this, I have another question from Vaishali, who wants to also know if you have some tips for fresh graduates who would want to start their career in retail.
Vaishali, the only tip as an entrepreneur I could give is that first try something small, make your own collection, get a first-hand feedback maybe from your family or friends who can be the best at it. Make them your models, make them wear those collections. If they are happy with it, if they appreciate what you have created, I think we can go all out, start approaching the stores then. But always, please remember that never forget what you're good at. Try sticking to your core. Do not follow what the market is about. Be confident in yourself. If you are confident about your certain design, which looks maybe different, which no other designer has done it, you can be the trendsetter in the market. So again, it's always just so again, I would just repeat that it's always about just being confident in what you are doing. Take a first-hand review from your family and friends who are your real well-wishers. Understand if they are comfortable wearing it. I think you are good to go in the market.
Okay. So with this, we also have a question from Simran. She actually has two questions, but what Simran wants to know from you is that when you get a collection from designers, how long do you keep them in your store? How long do you sell them in your store for what particular designer? And also, if the collection is not sold, then what happens to that collection?
Simran, I would say that it's a very technical question, so I would want to answer that in a very technical fashion. So, when a designer gives us a collection, the gestation period for that collection is almost 30 to 60 days, is the period for minimum which we keep it at our store. Because that's the rotation time we understand anybody would want to take or would want to understand that how the government is reacting in the time frame of 2 months. We clearly and completely understand as to whether the customers are interested in the collection or not interested in the collection. Even if the customers are interested in the collection, Vaishali, we would prefer rotating the collection because as an entrepreneur, I would not want to hold on to any designer's collection and would want to stop their sales. If the collection, for example, is not sold out in, say, a period of 60 days, there are other different stores, there are other different avenues where the designer can sell off that collection. Maybe if a collection is just, say, of 10 pieces and 7 pieces are sold, the 3 pieces we would either rotate it or reshuffle it or send it to some other place like an e-commerce portal or put it up in exhibitions or try collaborating or connecting with our different stores where the designer can clearly sell that collection off and not hold on to the collection is the main aim at any store so that we are not holding on to the designer's collection and be about something that what if the collection is not sold now. So let me just give a very relaxing point of view on this. Every designer faces that, right from your Manish Malhotra to a Gen X designer. I think it's every designer's worry when they launch their first collection that will this collection sell? So yes, every time it's not going to be a hunky dory. Clients are not going to appreciate the collections. So sometimes we have those months in the year where the collection does not sell. We are not demotivated, or the designers at the same time are not demotivated. For example, just before the lockdown, a lot of collection was made. March for us was a little slow period because the virus had already hit the country. So we all knew that the collection is not selling because of the markets and not because there's a fault in the collection. So to take things into the right spirit is only the solution. And for the question, then what happens to the collection when it's not sold? Of course, we try selling it off during sales or we take that hit as a loss, but we definitely are not demotivated and we do not blame ourselves at that time. Okay, the designer did not create the right collection. It might so happen that maybe the timing is not right. So we always have to wait for the correct timing. Maybe the collections created just before the lockdown, now we all would want to just pile them up right now and release them when the time would be right. And post the lockdown is going to be opened. We are not going to really display anything that's new because we don't expect the customers to come in right on the first day and start buying everything off the shelf. So to even uh, appreciate what the designer has created, we always wait for the right time and the right moment before releasing the collection.
Okay, sure. So with this, we also have a question connected to this. So I'm going to take that first, where Ankit wants to know. So this was Simran's question previously, which we were discussing, and
Oh,
Ankit had a
sorry.
question ahead to this. Yeah. So where Ankit wants to know if your collections are not sold at a particular time and in that particular fashion trend. So do they redesign it? So I'm sure he wants to know about probably recycling or upcycling, either options of what exactly happens with these collections. Do the designers do take them back for processing them again into something new? And are there such experiments happening?
Ankit, yes, of course, a lot of designers do take the collections back. There is a lot of recycling that happens. Sometimes the collection might just not work, as I said earlier. So we always have a way to work around it. Either we sell them at a little loss or we reduce the prices first. That's our main motto before we start to recycle the collection. Or if even that doesn't work, then I'm sure designers who are talented to create something new are also talented to recycle those collections into some other way which the clients always are ready to then appreciate.
Right. Okay. With this, we have a question from Nelson, who wants to know, though, so do you keep designer collections, to ensure a versatile product line on your store, like traditional, evening, contemporary, or something like that?
Oh yes, of course, we have all the variety in the store. Depending on the season and the time of the year, if it's say summer, we would have a little bit more of Western stuff also coming in our store along with traditional wear. Because during summer, we don't expect brides to walk in, we don't expect people to buy heavy Indian outfits. So for that time of the year, we definitely venture out into retailing Western wear. During the winter time, we have a lot of fusion garments that is more towards Indian silhouettes and Indian styles. So we try catering to a very versatile audience, and our age group of the audience also differs. Sometimes we have teens walking in our stores right from the age of 12 up to aunties or moms or grandmoms walking in up to the age of 70. So to just give a little example, we have like there have been so many times that when there are weddings in the family, we are styling the grandmothers. And you won't believe, Samira, for the grandmothers, we also have a specially curated lehenga that, of course, when a 70-year-old woman wants to wear, we cannot sell her a smaller choli with a typical skirt. We have something very traditional and we have something very conservative. But yes, we do cater to a lot of versatile audience, and at the same time, we don't restrict ourselves from saying that, oh, just because you're a grandmother, you should just be walking into a sari or a suit. No, you want to wear a lehenga, we will curate that in different style and as per your requirement, and we will cater that need for the customer.
Oh, okay. I'm sure that answers the question. With this, I have Gayatri asking a question, where Gayatri wants to know that, what helps to understand the customer needs, and, how do you hit the right button?
Gayatri, that's a tough question to answer. I think I just have one word for that is experience. Two words rather, experience and patience. Be patient enough, and experience will teach you everything. You'll fall at times, and then you learn to get up on your own. You'll understand your customers. There will be customers sometimes who will be disappointed with your selection and your curation at the store. But I think being patient is the only key then, and experience will teach you what's right for your customers.
Okay. Well, I also have a question from Remya where she wants to know that, in your entire year, like, do you have a planner or do you really have an understanding of when, promotional activities actually happen at retail stores?
So yes, we do have a planner. We have, you would be surprised to know we have a weekly planner because our collection needs to rotate every 2 weeks. So our window changes every week basically. Our floor display changes every week. Every 2 weeks we try and shuffling our collection. We are constantly in touch with all our designers. The moment they have something new, we are ready to launch that at our store. We have a pre-decided calendar where we decide which designer is launching their collection when. They inform us in advance, and accordingly, our dates are booked. We plan the launch event. We also have to ensure that at that time our customers might not be busy. For example, maybe in March or April, we would avoid to have any launch events because that's the time mums or all the family members are busy with the school exams and kids are giving their exams or people are traveling. So we would not want any of our customers to miss anything at the store. So everything needs to be put together. That's why the planner is what that helps us to plan as to what needs to be done and when things need to be done. Because being in the fashion industry, uh, change is the only constant for us. The moment the customer walks inside a customer for the second time, Samira, you would be surprised to know the first question that we get is, "Oh, why this piece is kept over here? Last time also when I entered, it was at the same place. Isn't the collection not changed?" So it's so difficult to answer them that, "Ma'am, you just entered last week." But still, every time the customer enters, whether it's in a span of or a gap of 2 days or 5 days, they always expect that, oh, the store might have something new for me to cater. That's where we come into picture, where we have to be constantly on our toes, keep changing our displays, keep shuffling our collections, keep calling for new collections, keep rotating, and everything goes into that constantly.
So with this, I do have one more question from Ayushi where she wants to know about, what it takes, to put up a visual merchandise, and if you can explain a little about visual merchandising as a topic.
So visual merchandising, as I just said, is very very challenging because especially being in the fashion industry, you really need to be on your toes constantly. There is a need to keep changing, and at the same time, uh, we need to show that how the same garment within a span of 2 days or 3 days can look pretty just by changing a little bit of its location or by changing the way it's being kept on the hanger or kept on the mannequin. And we at our store definitely have team members who are experts only in visual merchandising. They have a lot of experience in visual merchandising, so they are the best at doing that. We get their help in curating our collections and making our store look pretty. But yes, visual merchandising is definitely a great opportunity in fashion industry, and it will always keep you on your toes, and it's definitely a very challenging and always inspiring opportunity to take up in fashion industry.
Sure. So I have a question from Prajakta where, Prajakta would like to know if every entrepreneur worries when they are starting business. So can you please advise as to how much time does it take for business to actually start into profit? And like how many years need to be put in? Because many feel that, it's been years of business and it's not taking off, and should I shut down? And, these kind of thoughts that keep hitting their minds.
I think that's a very personal question, depends on individual to individual. I, I don't have any specific answer as to how long does any business take to hit it, or when should you shut it down or not shut it down or stay still. I think the only person who can answer is your accountant who's handling your books. Please call them up, sit with them, discuss your books, trust me, when it comes to seeing my own books and calling my own accountant who handles my books, I feel very scared that day. I always keep my fingers crossed that, oh my God, my accountant should not fire me, that, okay, our expenses have gone way beyond now, or our books are not looking that good. It's always like a nightmare. Oh my God, the accountant should just be happy. So I think the right person to answer that question would be your books and your accountant. Look at your expense, look at your income, be vigilant about what's happening in your back end also. Is your books of accounts favorable or not favorable will definitely give you an answer as to whether you're heading in the right direction or the wrong direction. And then to just answer the second question as to how long does a business take to come into the profit zone is completely again up to us as to how we are maintaining our incomes and how are we taking care of our expenses. To just quote Jack Ma, the owner of Alibaba, he said that 2020 is going to be tough for all the business houses. All the business houses have made losses because we're not operational. So the only way ahead in 2020 is, even if you are surviving, that is, even if any business house is breaking even in 2020, I think we should look at as a profit statement in our books. That's what Jack Ma, the owner of Alibaba, has given us a tip. So I think I'm definitely following that tip for 2020, that just plan to sail through it. Even if I don't make a loss in 2020 and I'm at break even, I think that would be my greatest achievement for this year. So it's very subjective, it's very individualistic, and keep checking your books of accounts and just have your goals and know where you want to go and what you want to achieve in life.
Yeah, sure. Mahima, we have a couple of few more questions. I hope you're good to take them ahead.
Yes, 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 definitely.
Okay, sure. So we already have a question where, Nelson again wants to know if, what would you say is the store's USP for you in compared to the other multi-designer stores?
I think I've already touched base that topic. So our USP would be customer trust and customer service. That's our main USP. We try and curate collections as per all our customers' needs and requirements. That's why we have these on and off events where our customers come to the stores. They get a time to interact with the designers. The feedback is given directly to the designers, and then whatever our merchandising team selects is basically is selected keeping the customers in mind as to what kind of uh, demographics we have when we get in terms of the customers, that is right from a teenager or a grandmom walking to our store, or we have a lot of pregnant women walking into our store who wants to buy something for their goodbye or post when they deliver, and I would say that's a very difficult audience to deal with because they have no size brackets sometimes. And to show them, Samira, sometimes a very large outfit also is very offending because then they feel that we are just being too futuristic about their size. So it's a very tricky audience to deal with. So for them, we try and also keep a segment in the store where we have these asymmetric uh, designed collections which fits into any body, right from my body to a pregnant woman who might be carrying the baby in her 7 month. So I think we try and understand what our audience looks like, and we try and curate a collection based in and around that. So that's what creates a USP for us in the market.
Sure. I have a question from Umama who wants to know, where if being from a non-fashion background, how did you manage to gather all the elements and people needed for you to start your business?
So I would only say that it's passion that was driving me into it. As I entered, I of course took baby steps. The stores that you all see now at Dharam Palace or at Pedder Road was not the journey that we started from. We started from a very small boutique, a rented boutique rather, with only a 400 square feet area in mall at Inox CR2. So the first 2 years were very experimental for me, but since I was not into this industry, but definitely yes, I had my family and friends helping me out. A lot of designers, as I approached them, they also gave me their insights, and all were very welcoming to help. So the first 2 years, we completely took it as an experimental year. We didn't know what's going to work out for us, what our customer base would look like, or what collections should we retail. We completely just took very baby steps. We curated our own collections. We took first-hand information. We took first-hand feedbacks from our customers, and yes, we were all ready to accept the failure. So I also feel that once, as an entrepreneur, we are not afraid of failures. There we go, or nothing can stop us. And I think then success is bound to happen to us because we're not afraid of the failures, and we're not afraid of doing wrong things, and we're not afraid of correcting ourselves after doing the wrong things. So self-learning is the only process to running this business, I feel.
Okay. Well, Meghna has a question where Meghna wants to know, how often do you give at you opportunity to learners? Like, if they are really amateurs, do you have a specific calendar to maintain, or do you, give them, like, is there a ratio that is actually there for them in your stores?
So we definitely give a lot of opportunities to amateurs or learners because and we hired a lot of interns during the summer months. Then you would be surprised to know, Samira, all my girls and my entire team, especially at the front end, started with me 5 years ago when they had no experience or they had just like a 6 months or a 1 year experience. We build our team on our own. We have groomed this team on our own. We have also eventually learned from this process, and all the entire staff at U Fashions is personally picked by me, and we come together and we again learn together in this entire process. So the entire team gets a kind of a training before they go on the floor. So whether it's an experienced person or an amateur person, the training and the grooming at U Fashion just remains the same. So we do not differentiate between any person who comes for an interview, whether they are amateur or experienced. We are only interested to see as to what are they going to offer on the board and what is their talent at. That's all, I think.
Sure, sure. So, with this, of course, one of the most, couple of, actually, I would say, audience members or students have asked me this question, but it's mainly also from Darshna, where she's been wanting to know that how do you see your boutique post COVID-19?
I think that's also my question, and I would want somebody to answer for me. But I think at this stage, it's very difficult to answer as to how I would see my boutiques post COVID-19, and especially being in Mumbai. So just because before the webinar started, I guess uh, everybody, there were a round of WhatsApp that are spreading that the lockdown in Bombay would extend until 31st of May, and Bombay is going to become the second Wuhan of India with our cases rising. So, especially being in Mumbai, I would not want to predict the future as to how the business is going to look like or what's going to happen. Firstly and foremost important for me right now is safety and health of everybody. Once we are out of this entire cycle of the virus, I think we can start thinking about our business. Yes, the only thing during this lockdown we are trying to do is keep our expenses to the lowest. That's all. And even post the lockdown opens, I think the new normal would be as to what we are living right now, maintaining social distancing. We wouldn't see so many clients walking in at the same time. We'll have to take one customer at a time. So definitely business will be affected post that, but that's the new normal that we all have to accept and live with it until we are not sure about our safeties and health.
Yeah, I'm sure it's more about stay home and stay safe, which is something that everyone will have to keep as a priority over businesses at this point in time. So,
Thanks.
we have a question from Manisha where she wants to know how fashion e-commerce business is going to influence the boutique business, the customized categories of
Samira, I can hear a lot of disturbance on the back.
disturbance in the background. Can we have the technical team please look into the disturbance in the background? Yeah, I think it's sorted. So,
Yeah,
yeah,
sorry,
the
can you
question,
repeat your question?
the question from Manisha was that, for the customized category of, the boutique business, how do you think fashion e-commerce business is going to influence it?
Fashion e-commerce is going to influence what? I could not hear that.
The fashion e-commerce business is going to influence the boutique business, but only in the category of customized, I would say bespoke collections, or making, giving the services to the industry, to the customers, which you often actually facilitate in a retail house.
So, Samira, as I earlier also said, that be confident in what you're doing and have faith in your own work. So, we don't really see e-commerce as our competitor, or we don't think that boutique businesses would be affected by e-commerce, because, as I also earlier said, that e-commerce is a complete different platform. That's where I feel as an individual, we always are confused and we always take e-commerce and retail as the same platform. But I would like to break that myth, and I would really put a light on that today e-commerce and to maintain a retail sector, it's completely two different platforms. We need two different teams. The same person who is selling your garments to the customers or who is attending to the customers might not have the expertise to manage your e-commerce portal. That person would not know how to create a website or to market your social media or to put the right post up correctly. So you would need a complete different team, and that's a complete different segment. The customers who would also then again in a similar fashion shop on e-commerce are not the same who go store to store shopping. And never to forget that retail experience is something very different. You get to feel the fabric, you get to try the fabric. So when we talk about e-commerce, the customers are not getting that feel and the fabric in fashion industry. So e-commerce is definitely not for the clientele that we target. E-commerce is a growing industry, but it's definitely tapping on different clientele. Your NRIs who cannot come to India are, of course, going to shop on e-commerce, but that doesn't mean that's going to affect my existing clientele. So any business opportunity that we take, we should also understand that we might create a whole new segment of different customers, which was not existing till now.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure, what you're saying is actually something where a lot of people will have to consider, and between retail and e-commerce businesses. So I do have a question, from Neetu, where they also want to know that are there any, from your experiences over the period of time, certain areas where you had challenges and certain mistakes that you would want to, get to everyone's notice that please do not do this mistake when you are venturing into a retail business?
So, as an entrepreneur, yes, we definitely did face a lot of challenge. Our biggest challenge, as I already said in our earlier years, were to get customer faith and customer trust. I think that's the biggest challenge, and every business is going to face that challenge. So let's be prepared. The first year of business is not going to be easy. The customers are not going to walk up to you and say, "Oh my God, I love it because I'm buying it from your store." We definitely had we made mistakes. To just give one example of mistakes was that initial year we were not prepared during, suppose for example, in our first sale, we were not prepared that 50 customers are going to walk in at the same time. And our team was completely, you know, not experienced to handle that kind of a rush. And at the same time, then when we talk about bespoke industry, we had to manage everybody's alterations, take measurements. So we completely goofed up, we weren't able to take the correct measurements. And when the clients came at the time of fitting, there were, of course, a little bit of mishap that happened. So they were furious that why it's not done in the first go. Some clients, measurements were not taken correctly. There were a little misfits happening, but yes, we were patient through it. The only thing we did was that we ensured that when the client comes for the second trial, they get the best outfit. And we also made our clients understand and we were quite acceptance about the fact that yes, it's a fault from our end rather than just blaming the client. And the clients were quite cooperative. So my only suggestion to everybody would be that when anybody is trying to start your own business, be prepared that your clients and customers are not going to trust you completely in the very beginning. They all want to see that which business houses stand and for how long are you standing and what is the customer service that you're going to provide. Once the clients are completely satisfied with your brand and the service that you all are providing, I think then everything is for you, and the clients are then always there to support you.
Okay. Well, with this, we also have a question in regards to how do you build a successful customer base? So this is from how do you build a successful customer base?
The I think the only way to build a successful customer base is to be true to them and to always, especially being in the fashion industry, to always updating yourself, keep latest collections at the store, keep rotating your collections, always looking for new designers, always ensure that when your customer walks into the store, they are seeing something new for themselves. Understand what your customer wants, try showing them that product, and yes, be true to them, and your service matters right from the billing counter uh, to the way they enter your store. Everything has to be a memorable experience from your customer. Create it like an experience. They are buying a luxury product. They want to feel the product. They want to have the whole experience be like a detox activity for them. When I look at a luxury shopping, I always believe that for maximum customers, it's more of a detox, it's more of a time that they want to spend for themselves. So why not make that time the most memorable time for those customers? That's the
Okay.
only way you can create a strong customer base.
I'm sure we are running short of time to understand that there are more and more questions actually rolling into the chat box where people really want to take this complete opportunity of learning from an expert sitting here running a very, very successful fashion retail business. And I'm sure I somewhere make a promise to the students to also have this kind of interaction in the near future, where Mahima has always had the warmth of welcoming and always being available to guide and support at Lama to all of us. So I'm going to take just maybe last
Samira, can't hear you. Your voice is
two or
breaking.
three questions. Your time beyond this. Can we just move ahead and not more? Okay, move on to just about two more questions or so. Could you get
Samira,
Mahima? We have just
I
two
would.
more questions. Maybe can we take
I
them,
can't
please?
hear you. Yeah, we can, but your voice is breaking.
Okay, am I audible now?
Yeah, perfect. You can. Yeah, we can take two more questions.
Okay, so they want to know what is your favorite aspect of being a fashion and a lifestyle entrepreneur.
Oh, I think my most favorite aspect about it is about the fashion industry is basically uh, the constant need to be on your toes and the constant need to keep updating yourself. It never lets you sit down on your desk. We always have to keep looking for new collections. We always have to keep hunting in the market what's coming new, or when it comes to retail front as to how we can make our store look more presentable or how we can do our visual merchandising. So the challenge that this industry always keeps you on your toes, I think that's my most favorite aspect about being a fashion entrepreneur.
I'm sure for all the energy and all the enthusiasm that you actually get into the business is what is
Yes.
really I'm sure because I am not just that I've been a part of this experience at times, But I'm sure the fact that you're always on the toes is also what keeps you on the high in terms of being
But
at the peak of business.
yes, but being in the fashion industry, Samira, I think, and this is my message to all the students out there, that this industry is very demanding. You cannot expect a single dull day in this industry. Firstly, we're surrounded with so many vibrant colors and designs, which itself will brighten up your day every time you see them. And the challenge that to always keeping your to always be updated whenever your customer comes in. As I said, they always want to see something new. As a result, even we as an entrepreneur are always like in a continuous hunt to present something different to our customers is the most exciting thing. And I think being in the fashion industry, everybody should be ready to be on their toes and to take
Yeah,
this as
I'm
a
sure.
challenge.
I'm sure. So there are, I'm actually going to merge two questions which I have actually maybe from one of this thing to come up where, Manisha wants to know that to start a brand, what are the important elements to actually keep in mind? And right now, in the current situation of COVID, do you think it's the right time for startups to actually start thinking about venturing into a business and thinking about beginning at this point in time?
So, firstly, to answer the first question as to what are the elements that you need to start a business, right? That was the first question.
Yes, sure.
And to focus on your brand. I would only want to say one thing is that be clear as to what your business is about. Let your brand per se reflect that ideology completely into it. Be sure of what you want to achieve. For example, if you are a fashion designer, it's just not about being a fashion designer. We need to understand whether we are a couture designer, we are a prep designer, or we are designing only traditional clothes like a simple sari, or we are going to get into an Indo fusion designing, or we are going to design menswear, or for kids, or accessory. We need to first understand that what is our core expertise, focus on that, then plan how your brand is going to reflect that ideology to the world. Those are the core elements we should all look at before starting up a business or before starting up the brand. Secondly, whether this is the right year for the startups or no, I would say it's a very tricky question again. Again, depends on what we are looking at and what is it that we are planning to start. We need to understand firstly that the markets currently are in a lockdown, nothing is operational. To predict the future as to when things are going to open, nobody has an answer. So, planning definitely is worth it in 2020. Plan your startup completely. Utilize this time to strategize your business, understand how you're going to launch it, maximize your time in uh, setting up your industry completely. If you're going to, for example, say launch your label. So plan out everything. Take a planner in hand, write down the entire things that this is what I'm going to design, how my designs are going to look like, or what is the kind of collections that I would launch, and which all cities I would target, or which all markets I would target. So utilize 2020 for planning and strategizing. Wait for the time and the markets to be right, and I think that would be the right time to then completely launch it once we are strong at our back ends. Trust me, our front end will 102% be strong.
Wow, so much of I would say learning and so much of insight experience that has come in from you, Mahima, and I'm very sure that it is very strong. A lot of students or in the audience are actually looking at connecting with you or connecting with you, and I'm sure girls we are going to share all the details in a little while. But before we take a little more deep into it, just one moment, please. Sorry. So we have, we have a quick video to share with all of you with everything that actually happens at Lamarck, because at Lamarck we've always had a lot of industry exposure and interactions. And to continue the series, nothing stopped us. Even if we are at lockdown, we have begun with this webinar series where experts are actually reaching out to you, teaching you with all their experiences. But I would like to share a quick video with everyone to show everything that happens at Lamarck. Can we please have that video? Well, this is Life at Lamarck, where I'm sure all of us actually have a lot of fun, but at the same time, yes, we've had a lot of students who have turned into successful entrepreneurs themselves, and of course, brands for themselves, and working with the best of brands. Mahima, I'm sure a lot of students are actually wanting to also, look forward to connecting you sometime in the near future, and have been asking us for your Instagram handle and other details. Kind of quick brief on that. But before we share that with everyone, I would on behalf of my entire team at Lamarck and the entire management, students, faculties, want to say a big thank you for always being there. Sometimes I know, I give you such short notices and it's just a phone call and you're always, just absolutely ready and up there to accept and do it for the students. We've had a lot of events, even for fashion students, especially where, jury, as a jury member, as an expert, Mahima has always supported and in fact allowed us to host them also at few. So not and much more like today's webinar also, she so willingly took this up and has given us so much of knowledge, so much of insight into the industry, and so much of I would say learning to take back home for each and every one of us. So this series continues, and we have a session tomorrow again where we are going to be discussing life of a design aficionado tomorrow with Lavina Baldota, which is going to be at the same time at 6 o'clock. So please be there. And Mahima, thank you once again from all of us. For all of them, do you have anything else as your, last, like a final message for the concluding thing for today's webinar?
Yeah, firstly, I would like to thank Lamarck to bring me on board and to give me this opportunity to share with the students. I think Lamarck is doing a fabulous job during this lockdown, connecting with everybody and trying to pass on this knowledge to the students, especially to our aspiring students. The only message I would love to give
to all the students at Lermac is that firstly, stay safe during this lockdown, stay healthy. I know it's a tough time for everybody, but we need to be strong. We need to trust ourselves. We need to have faith. Once this time is over, I think our lives will come back to normal. So let's just wait for the normalcy to resume, and don't let your confidence or your thoughts shatter during these tough times. Uh, these are the times which make us strong, and once we stand through these times, I think we all will shine and rise high. So stay positive and keep, and for Lermac, I think keep the good work going. And I'm very, very, very thankful, Samira, again to you for including, for giving me this opportunity to be a part of Lermac and always sharing my insights with the students.
Thank you, Mahima, and thank you all the students and everyone in the audience who's from the industry, from various walks of life. We have various other, university and education professors who are there online with us, and a lot of people from India, and a couple of friends of the industry who are there from Argentina and London and Nairobi, who have joined us for this webinar specially. So thank you everyone who's made it to be there at Indian Standard Time also, and being there, with all of us. Namaste, and thank you everyone. Stay safe, stay healthy, be at home, have a lot of family time and enjoy yourselves. Thank you, Mahima, once again.
Thank you.